Build your skills with some.
You are listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network, whether you're listening to us live or you're listening to us as a podcast. As a matter of fact, the best way of looking at us, IBGR, International Business Growth Radio Network, is a live streaming broadcast podcast. That's how I look at it. All right, so what are we talking about today? This is segment 3. This is the third podcast in the series, the third segment in the series. And I'm not going to cover all the other material. If this interests you, you need to go back and listen to the other two, and it should, because I'm talking about things that are most important to you as an entrepreneur and business owner, and that is, how do you read the economy? How do you understand when bureaucrats and talking heads are BSing you? And how do you outrun the competition? The old story of the bear and the hunters, and you don't have to outrun the bear, you just got to outrun everybody else. So put on your sneakers here, because what you're going to be able to do is outrun the competition. Go to the website, ibgr.network. That's ibgr.network. When you get there, all the way to the right, you'll see resources. Mouse over that. You'll see show notes. Click it. When you get there, if you're listening to this live, then you'll see New World Business Economics Show 1. All right. It says NEO, N-E-O, because I'm hot on the Matrix. It's coming out soon. World Business Economics Show, Biz, B-I-Z, Econ. Now, if, in fact, you're getting here later as part of a podcast, then right next to that on the show notes page, you're going to see something that says New Choice of Business Search. Put in that title, search it, and up it will pop. All right, let's roll. We are in segment 3, podcast 3. All right. So now what we've done is podcast 1, you got to listen to it, and that is talking about how government intervention in most economies is dangerous, painful, and probably not productive. And we can use the pandemic as a great example. Last podcast, segment 2, we talked about how did this whole area of economics come about, and we start with Adam Smith, who was probably not the founder, not the discoverer, but the first person in modern times to apply scientific method to something and define it. Now, this segment here, we're taking one of the 3 basic business models, market-based, command-based, and mixed, and we're talking market-based, which is where I love to be because this is who I am, all right? So now, go down to segment 3, belief in the invisible hand. I don't know how many times you've heard invisible hand, but let's talk about it, okay? Exactly what is the invisible hand? Well, it is the unseen forces that move market-based economies. Now, what would be the unseen forces? Well, the unseen forces is that this is totally organic, totally decentralized, and totally dependent upon decisions that you make. If you live in a country like Australia, and I think you got about 25 million people, then in a market-based economy, which Australia is mixed, but better than a lot, is that the invisible hand of the market is what happens when you put together all of those 25 million different decisions that are being made constantly about what to buy, what to build, what to pay. That's really what it comes down to. It's pretty simple. And so what you're doing here is, and go back to the previous show, is the big contribution to Adam Smith was that he looked at economics at the most personal level possible. You see, his premise is, and it's one that I hold, and it's relevant to what we're talking about here, is that economic decisions are basically not rational, not based on reason. They're based on emotion. Now, once we make that decision, we employ our considerable intellects to make that decision logical and reasonable to us. Okay, yeah, it makes sense. But the reality is that the vast majority of buying decisions, not every one of them, you're in the corporate world, perhaps a lot of those are strictly spec-based. But even then, it's not really totally rational. Especially if you got a vendor you really like or a vendor you really don't like. And so what Adam Smith says is that those decisions, when they are made by individuals and the market is controlled by individuals, is that this is going to be based on emotion and based upon feelings, and when you put them all together, you're going to get this vector. Now, what's interesting about that is that every individual in this whether it's me as a person or let's say I'm representing my family or my company, is that I'm pursuing self-interest. I'm pursuing my self-interest, the things that I want. And you could say, you could look at me in terms of either what I buy or what I make. However, I could be making some really bad decisions. There's a lot of people whose self-interest, like Wolf of Wall Street, giving you a good example. Or we go back to Wall Street, the one that had Michael Douglas in it. And you have those people that Gecko says greed is good. Well, here's the deal. Those people are anomalies in a capitalist system. Why? Because it's outside of what is a good society. Unless you've got a really rotten society, then I guess, you wouldn't have capitalism anyway. And so here's what you've got is that for every one of those bad actors that are making bad decisions like that, you've got 10, 15, 20 people who are making good decisions in terms of the greater good of society. Not that anybody's really going, what's the better good of society, but it drives all of your behaviors. I mean, how many of you are thinking about when you build your business, you're going to build your business for good? Well, you're not going to you're going to build a good business, but you're going to do good things. That's what I'm talking about. And so the best interest of a great society is fulfilled because the bad actors are nullified, unless they're the preponderance of people, and then you don't have a great society. All right, so now, market-based economics. Let's look at a couple bullets I got here. Number one, it's behavior-based, not based on intentions. And this is where a lot of people who are capitalists like myself get into interesting debates with people who are socialists or communists, a command-based economy. And the reason for it is, capitalism is about this and that. No. And socialism is about the good of people and the whole bit. Yeah, it is. And you know what? Where it leads you are places you don't want to go. You see, what's that old biblical saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. In economics, I don't really care about intentions, at least initially. What I care about are the behaviors that I am seeing from people. Market-based economics is a behavior-based way of looking at financial transactions, okay? These are voluntary transactions that require accurate and timely information. Accurate and timely information. And what are you looking at? That's price. Because what price tells you is what is the interaction between demand and supply. And that's something we're going to be talking about, especially when we go to the last segment today, is that in this particular case, the key word here is demand. In other words, how does this work? Well, I've got demand, supply, price. Let's put them together. It starts with demand. What does the potential customer want to purchase? What need they trying to satisfy? What problem are they trying to make go away? And that is the demand. Then, once they've vocalized that, or they've made it clear in their head that this is what I've got to do, now they look at the market to see what is the supply. How much of that is out there that I can grab? And the issue here is pretty simple. If there's a lot of it, then I can shop around, and those suppliers are going to compete for my business, so more than likely, it's going to drive the price down. On the other hand, once I've identified what I need, the demand, and I look out there and almost nobody is doing it, then more than likely, the price is going to be higher. And so you see, price is a function of the balance or interaction, really not a balance, because we will talk about a balance between the two, but it's really the interaction between the two of those will determine what the price is. And price is absolutely essential because it's the thing that communicates to the market what it wants to do. And this is the danger of when you move to a command economy. The exact opposite of this is who sets price? The government sets price. So now what I'm using is totally inaccurate information to try to make a decision. Here, when the market fixes the price, that's a much more accurate picture because what it's telling you is supply and demand. And that's why you've got to be careful, because if the government gets involved in this, a mixed economy, it distorts the pricing mechanism. What happened in the crash around the world, starting in the United States in 2007 and 2008, the banking crisis, which in reality really wasn't a banking crisis, at least at the beginning. It was a housing crisis. And what happened is that the government was underwriting loans. And so therefore anybody could get a loan for a house. And so what you now see is the government distorted the market where to an individual who probably couldn't afford that house, but they're making an emotional decision, well, we could really upgrade and get that house that we couldn't afford before, so I'm going to move there. The bankers, on the other hand, where are they at? The government's going to underwrite this, so guess what? Those people can't afford it. They're going to buy it. We're going to repossess it in 6 months. The government's going to guarantee the mortgage payment to us. We'll get our money back, and then we get to flip the house and sell it again. Well, that worked until everybody did it, and then suddenly the whole thing fell apart. Okay? And so how does a market-based economy work? The government's role. Here is the government's role in a market-based economy. The system is structured to penalize lying, use of force, and failure to honor contracts. You cannot misrepresent what you sell. Okay? You cannot force people to buy from you or to sell to you. And anybody who signs a contractual agreement, a valid contract, is now required to honor that contract. That's it. End of story. That's all you've got to do in a market-based economy. Now, of course, countries are going to go a little bit further than that, and of course they will, because there are things that are ancillary to it you can add on. But at some point, government intervention into the economy has gone beyond anything here. Okay? So any intervention beyond this now moves us into the mixed economy approach, and that leads to short-term inefficiencies and long-term destruction. And here's why. All mixed economies eventually wind up into command economies. It's centrifugal force. It's where we open this in the first segment in the first podcast, is that government and bureaucracies are going to grow. And so the more that you let them in the door, the bigger they're going to get. Now, don't go anywhere, because when we come back, I'm going to take the other side. I'm going to be talking about command economies and what's wrong with that. Yeah, it has some positive side, but I don't think you're going to like them. And then we're going to talk about the mixed economy, which seems to be everybody's preference, but that's really on the road to perdition. So you've been listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm host for the show. Today's show is the beginning of a series that we are doing on New World Business Economics. And in this particular case, Neo, because I'm inspired by the new Matrix movie coming out. I've seen some of the trailers, and I'm like, okay, I wonder what they're going to do with this. New World Business Economy, Show 1, Spotting BS. Don't go anywhere.